There's something currently happening with the AEW women's division that doubters don't want to admit. I'm not gonna put it down to a single person or a single moment. In fact, I'd say that what we're currently seeing out of the AEW women's division is the culmination of years of hard work from everyone involved. AEW's women's division is finally starting to feel important. It's not perfect, and there will always be room for improvement, but for the first time since the company's inception, it feels like an effort is being made to highlight the women's division. Multiple storylines across the promotion's 3 TV shows and more than one women's match on certain shows have become the norm. But even as a group effort, every movement needs someone at the forefront to lead the way. In this case, that leader is the current AEW Women's World Champion, timeless Toni Storm. Toni Storm is approaching her 2-year anniversary of her AEW debut, and in such a short amount of time, she's managed to break through and become one of the most beloved and brightest stars in the entire company, male or female. And while it did take a while to get there, once she found her footing with her current character as a starlet from the golden age of Hollywood, it became clear that she was the perfect choice to lead the AEW women's division into a new era. The crazy part is, we almost missed out on this gimmick. We almost missed out on Toni Storm in AEW, or wrestling for that matter, completely. This is the story of a woman who became so disenfranchised with pro wrestling that she seriously considered walking away from it all. But by betting on herself, she proved to the world that she is truly timeless. Hailing from Auckland, New Zealand, Toni Storm, like many wrestlers of today, developed a love for professional wrestling at a young age. After moving to Australia, Storm began training and made her in-ring debut at just the age of 13. When she was 18, she would venture out in hopes of catching a big break. It wasn't long before Storm's talent caught the attention of wrestling promoters around the world, leading to opportunities on the international stage. Her tenure in promotions like Stardom in Japan and Progress Wrestling in the UK showcased her versatility and adaptability, earning her acclaim from fans and peers alike. After holding gold in both promotions, it was only a matter of time before WWE came calling. After all, they were the only big game in town at the time, and they were also recruiting ruthlessly for their women's division as well. Women's wrestling was finally starting to be taken more seriously, thanks to other promotions of course. This is the part of the video where I'd like to give a promotion like TNA credit for establishing their women's division at a time when WWE treated their women like a joke. It took a while, but WWE was eventually the last major company to get on board and give their women a legitimate chance. After all, they were signing wrestlers from around the globe who could actually go in the ring. The times were changing. MMA was also proving that women could draw and be legitimate badasses if given the chance. So it only made sense that they'd be interested in signing a talent like Toni Storm. Young, talented, and with the look of a star, she checked all the boxes. And so Storm would make her debut with the company in 2017 for the Mae Young Classic, a showcase tournament for some of the best women's wrestlers available at the time. Storm would have a strong performance, making it all the way to the semifinals before ultimately being eliminated by Kairi Sane. She then made it official by signing a multi-year deal with WWE. Over the next year, Storm would mostly settle in as part of the NXT UK brand. She would find her biggest success up to that point in the second iteration of the Mae Young Classic in 2018, where she would defeat Io Shirai in the finals at the first WWE All-Women's Pay-Per-View Evolution to win the entire tournament. This was a sign that someone in WWE believed in her, but in the end, it wouldn't prove enough. After winning the Mae Young Classic, Storm would make efforts to become the NXT UK Women's Champion. She failed in her effort to become the first ever Women's Champion of the brand when she lost to Rhea Ripley. However, she was able to defeat Ripley in a rematch months later to officially become champion. Her reign would last for half a year before ultimately losing her title to Alba Fire. After this, it was mostly sporadic appearances across both NXT UK and NXT. Contrary to popular belief, Triple H didn't use Storm to her full potential when she made the jump to the US for NXT. She was mostly used as a filler feud for the other top stars during that era. Things only got worse when she was called up to the main roster as a part of the SmackDown brand. This was peak awful WWE, which was only proven when she entered a feud with then Women's Champion Charlotte Flair. This was the feud that spawned an infamous segment where Toni Storm was pie-faced by the champion. They would have their match where Toni lost. To the surprise of some, but not me, Toni Storm requested her release from WWE shortly after, and it would be granted. Just like that, Storm was gone from WWE. And in her 4 years with the company, she really only saw success in NXT UK. An absolute travesty for someone of her talent level. In an interview with Renee Paquette months later, Storm would reveal that she felt underappreciated and at times like WWE didn't respect her. She would further note that the company crushed her love for wrestling because it didn't feel like wrestling anymore, and further noting that talent couldn't even say the word wrestling. Toni Storm wasn't the first to say this, and she definitely wasn't the last either. She was part of a long list of wrestlers who left WWE feeling lost. It got so bad that she admitted that she was close to retiring. Her love for wrestling just wasn't there anymore. But thankfully for her, the landscape of wrestling had changed since the last time she was a free agent. To put it simple, WWE wasn't the only major game in town anymore. Toni Storm made her AEW debut the moment she was free from her 90-day no-compete clause. Making her debut in a qualifier for the Owen Hart tournament, she picked up a win against the Bunny. Storm would sign a multi-year deal with AEW, stating that she felt at home with the promotion and instantly had her love for wrestling reignited. It wouldn't take long for Storm to become a major presence within the AEW women's division. I think it's fair to say that Storm joined AEW at a time when the women's division was still very much taking a backseat compared to everything else. You had to really connect with the crowd to even stand a chance at getting TV time. The likes of Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa, Hikaru Shida, and Jamie Hayter were essentially the big four when Storm joined the company. And she wrestled all of them within 2 months of joining AEW, which meant that the company thought very highly of Storm. When Thunder Rosa took time off due to injury, AEW decided to crown an interim Women's World Champion until Rosa could come back. So, in a match that featured Toni Storm, Britt Baker, Hikaru Shida, and Jamie Hayter, it was Toni Storm who would come out on top to become interim Women's World Champion. Sure, it had the stupid label of interim, but it was huge that Storm was holding gold in AEW just 5 months after her debut, and she earned it. The crowd might have wanted Jamie Hayter to win more, but Storm was still a great choice who the crowd accepted. I should point out that at this point, Storm was clearly a superstar of the division, but she was missing something. Just that one thing that would catapult her into the stratosphere as a major star, not just in the women's division, but of the entire company. Storm would lose her interim title at the next pay-per-view to Jamie Hayter in one of the best women's matches in company history. Storm's reign as interim women's champion was retroactively made an official reign the night after she lost it, as Thunder Rosa was stripped of the title. After this, Toni Storm would experiment with character work. At the start of 2023, she would turn heel, forming an alliance with Saraya and Ruby Soho, going by the name of The Outcasts. Now, I wasn't a fan of The Outcasts and their constant beatdown segments every week, but in hindsight, I think it made Toni Storm more comfortable with character work. She was already one of the best in-ring performers in the company, but as I said earlier, she was missing something. Her time with the Outcasts laid the foundation for what we see today. Toni would become a 2-time Women's World Champion when she defeated Jamie Hayter at Double or Nothing. She had a decent second reign, but it was what happened after she lost the belt once more that truly changed everything. After losing her belt to Hikaru Shida, Toni Storm went off the deep end. She left the Outcasts in dramatic fashion, but she also started to become more theatrical. Storm would come off delusional with a sense of grandiose in her backstage interviews. She talked as if she was taking part in the making of the next big motion picture. She began throwing shoes and belittling others. It was a sight to behold. The whole thing was hilarious, but it introduced us to a different side of Toni Storm. I honestly never knew she was this good at promos. I mean, we had seen her hold her own on the mic before, but this was different. There was a level of wit and creativity here that instantly made her the talk of the wrestling world. This was timeless Toni Storm, a starlet ripped right out of the golden age of Hollywood. It was brilliant, and it came with a brand new presentation which included new entrance music, a black and white filter anytime she's on screen in a non-wrestling role, and a crew consisting of her personal butler, Luther, and her #1 fan, Mariah May. It's the type of character that the AEW Women's Division had been lacking for a long time. It's perhaps the best character the AEW Women's Division has seen, apart from Britt Baker. There's this common misconception that AEW is just a wrestling show with no characters, but that couldn't be further from the truth. There's a reason why guys like Swerve, Hangman, and Samoa Joe are beloved, because they're great characters who have motivations and backstories. Part of the reason why the AEW Women's Division faltered for the first few years was because we were hardly given any insight on who these women are and what makes them, them. Timeless Toni Storm was a breakthrough moment for the division in the sense that it proved that a wrestler who's well liked can become a legit star of the show if given the chance. Toni Storm was given the ball and she never looked back. It's a shame that her rise came at the expense of Hikaru Shida's third reign as champion, but it would feel like a missed opportunity if this version of Toni wasn't your champion. And the crowd reactions say it all. Her music hits and the place goes crazy. It helps that Storm is great in the ring, of course. She found that one piece though that she was missing, a great character that sets her apart from the rest. And you can bet that anytime she has a microphone, she's gonna say some outlandish thing that either makes you laugh or just keeps you listening. The bit where she was confusing Ian Riccaboni with Tony Schiavone, for example, was incredible. Some might think the gimmick is too over the top, and that's fine, but I think this is just the right level of sports entertainment for AEW. Because when the bell rings, Toni is actually a legit threat who can go. And now she finds herself in one of the best built programs the AEW Women's Division has seen with Deonna Purrazzo. It's actually crazy that the Toni Storm we saw from the Outcasts is the same Toni Storm we're seeing now. And because of her incredible work, Storm has become the leader of the next era for the AEW Women's Division. The week I'm putting out this video will be a week where Dynamite will feature 2 women's matches, one featuring Toni Storm. Collision is now 4 weeks in a row with 2 women's matches. Multiple storylines are happening across the division. Tony Khan is investing heavily in the women's division with big signings. Perhaps most notably, Mercedes Moné's arrival is imminent. As I said at the beginning, it's not perfect, but it's leaps and bounds better than what it was from 2019 to 2023. And it's a group effort by everyone involved. When we look back at the moment the AEW Women's Division had its breakthrough moment, I hope people don't forget who was leading the charge when it first happened. It was timeless Toni Storm. From seriously contemplating retirement to now living in a very real reality where main eventing a pay-per-view is possible, Toni Storm has put in the work to be remembered as a pillar of the AEW Women's Division. She came in at a time when things weren't ideal, but she made them ideal with what she was given. And now she gets to be a part of a women's division that is finally thriving. I talked about debuts, but just wait until the likes of Jamie Hayter return too. Those two have some unfinished business. I'll leave it off at this. In 2019, the biggest star in professional wrestling was a woman. There's no reason why that can't happen again. With the increased time and increased effort, I anticipate that we'll see some breakthrough moments this year from the women's division. And who knows, if you build the division well enough, there's no reason why you can't have a Continental Classic next year. But it takes time, just like it did for Toni Storm, because it takes time to become timeless.